Welcome to Shifting from Grudge to Grit, Grace, and Gratitude. I'm Anisa Taran, and I'm joined by my co-host Jamila, and we have the lovely Karishma all the way from Queensland, Australia, that is joining us today. I'm just going to press live on our Instagram, which this week is working, fortunately. And do join us with engaging this conversation. The topic today is self-love through forgiveness. We delve into how letting go of the past hurts and embracing forgiveness leads to a more fulfilling life, and forgiveness being a powerful tool that can free us from the emotional chains of resentment and anger. Just a little bit about Karishma. I love this. Is a fierce feminine leader. Through her unique and impactful courses based on the modalities like neuro-linguistic programming and hypnotherapy, Karishma is passionate about women's empowerment, and we are celebrating Women's Month in South Africa. So, pretty apt for this day. She's on a mission of helping 1 million women around the world by 2025 in falling in love with themselves. Love it. She hopes to create such a world one day in which not even one woman in a violent marriage with no voice and no one to turn to for help, believing they are worthless. It is her passion and purpose in life to support and uplift women, helping them realize their strength, courage, and resilience. Wow. Over to you, Jamila, just to welcome her.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our guests, and a very warm welcome to you, Karishma, all the way from Australia, Queensland. So, Anisa, it's wonderful to be back in our seats and addressing our audience. And what a wonderful topic this is. So many powerful words. And like you said, it's so apt for us to be discussing this in Women's Month. And I find it so impressive that you've put it out there and you want to reach 1 million women. That's absolutely amazing. I can imagine how many women whose lives you've already touched. So well done to you. And again, welcome. We look forward to the next hour, to spending the next hour with you and learning all about you, and most importantly about forgiveness.
Thank you, Jamila and Anisa. It's definitely a pleasure to be here. And I would love to share my story. I would love to talk about forgiveness. And actually, I didn't realize that it is Women's Month in South Africa. So, this conversation is definitely suitable for the month, I think.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, do tell us, where did your hero's journey story begin and why you embarked on the journey of self love and forgiveness and having this beautiful, audacious goal of touching 1 million women's lives by 2025?
So I was growing up. I always struggled with low self-esteem and self-doubt, lack of self-worth, and most of it was because of the childhood conditioning and messages I got from well-meaning parents who, if perhaps if they would have known better, they would have done better, but they only did what they knew. And some of the messages that were passed on to me were, because I am a woman, I better learn to cook and clean and take care of my husband, and by a certain age I need to find a partner, get married, and take care of him, take care of my kids, and like prioritize the whole world as above you. And because you are a woman, you are like second class citizen, you are not as important as your husband, you have to take care of him first. And some of those messages that I was passed on, that were given to me from my parents and other adults in my life. And plus, I grew up in a family where there was a lot of dysfunctional household and dysfunctional dynamics. I saw my mother getting abused by my dad, domestic violence, etc., which gave me a lot of low self esteem and self worth issues. And along with that, even though I grew up in a family where subconsciously I associated love with abuse because that's what I saw in my family. Consciously, I had that big dream of finding a partner, getting happily married, and staying in that happily ever after marriage because I grew up watching a lot of romantic movies. So I will fantasize, even as a teenager, I will fantasize that my Prince Charming will show up on a white horse one day and take me away from the rest of the world. Plus, obviously, the messages I was given growing up that find a partner by a certain age, you need to get married.
Mm.
When that man didn't showed up by the age I was told that he needs to, my self doubt and insecurities got to a whole another level where I questioned if I'm even worthy of even having a partner, because if I'm worthy of having one, why don't I have one yet? So what's wrong with
Mm.
me? I had all those insecurities and self doubt and questioning my own judgment that what's wrong with me? How do I fix myself so I can find a partner? So eventually, I started working with a coach who can help me with self love and overcome self doubt and work on my subconscious mind. And when I entered into her program, when I signed up to her program, my intention was to hopefully I can fix myself by learning what she's sharing, so I can finally find a partner and my big dream
Mm.
will finally become a reality. And by the time I finished the course, I realized that there was nothing really wrong with me. There was nothing to fix because I was
Mm.
perfect
Mm.
and whole in the way I am. And it was just the messages that I needed to let go of, the limiting beliefs. So once
Sure.
I let go of those, once I embraced self love, I realized that my story was not just my own unique story, it's something that happens to most women in some or the other way. Most of us face similar issues. So I decided to become a self love coach to help other women overcome what I have overcome in my life. And that's how my hero journey came into existence.
What a beautiful story that is, and I just find it amazing how we've been brought up in an environment where, in order for us to deem ourselves as being successful, we have to look outside of ourselves for achieving that or accomplishing that. Like you say, you brought up to believe that um, to have a happy life or a successful life, you have to be married at a certain age and you have to attract a partner. And when that doesn't come, then you're seen as if there's something wrong with you. But what we should be teaching our young women and young girls is that they need to just look within, and every success that you could ever possibly want is exactly there within yourself. So I just find that we don't express this, we don't prioritize this, especially in young individuals. And it doesn't have to just be a woman, but even in our males. If we drive this and we make sure that they are full from that perspective, the type of individuals that they turn out to be when they've become adults is chalk and cheese. And there's so many issues that we have to deal with that stem from insecurity, that stem from a lack of self-love and self-appreciation. And I can really, really and truly resonate with you, in the sense that every every accolade that you can have is seemingly attached to you finding a partner. But what's wrong with just finding that person within yourself, celebrating that person, acknowledging that person? And yeah, I mean, it's wonderful work that you're doing, and it's so admirable that from your own pain, you have now dealt with it and you are using it now to pay it forward and to make sure that other women never ever go through the insecurities and the doubts that you felt as you were growing up and reached a state of adulthood.
Thank you. And yes, that's very true. That's like obviously the conditioning I got was, since you're a woman, you better find one partner, or something is definitely wrong with you. And if you don't find one by a certain age, you will have to settle for a second best, because all good ones will be taken. So you better rush, speed up the process, find one as soon as possible by that age, and get
Yes.
married. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Oh
that
my
was
gosh.
definitely.
Yes.
And Anissa, I think that, your hero's journey actually begins when you realize that you are your own hero. You don't need
Absolutely.
anybody, a knight in shining armor, or a beautiful woman or a damsel or whatever it is to save you. All you need is yourself and the recognition of how powerful you are as an individual. And it's difficult to do, especially as you say, Karishma, when you've been conditioned in a way to believe, especially that women are second class citizens, and your rights are taken away from you. You don't actually have full freedom to make choices for your life, to choose the things that you want to do for your life in order for you to deem your life successful. And too many women are going through this, and it was something that was uh, not talked about much. It was a taboo to speak about it before, but I'm so
Mhm.
glad that women are finding the power within themselves now to stand up and to speak out about this. And hopefully the next generation, I can see it already, because they're powerful, they're empowered, and they're strong, and they're standing in their truth. And I just hope that we as women as well, and Anissa, you and I as mums to boys, help to change that whole perception and narrative.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Karishma, I was thinking about your earlier lens of what love looked like. And, it was abusive. And so that's the model and construct that you believed was the correct model. So not only must you find love, but at a certain age, and it must happen at this point in your life. But there's also the attached idea of you must be mistreated, and that is the correct way. So how do we then? I mean, how would you? There's a question I really want to delve into with you, because based on that lens that you viewed, what type of relationships did you actually attract in the beginning? Did you almost attract a repeat of your parents' marriage? And also, how would you then define grit in your own life? And can you share an example of a situation where that grit was put to the test in those type of relationships?
Coincidentally, I have actually never been in a relationship so far till yet. I haven't yet attracted a partner, and it was kind of a blessing in disguise, because at one point I was crying and yearning for a partner, and where is my man? And like subconsciously, obviously had limiting beliefs about men, about relationships, and how love is abusive because of what I saw growing up. So when I started doing this work, when I it's worked on my subconscious mind, I realized that how blessed and lucky I am to not have a relationship before I did this kind of work, because now I'm more conscious
Mm,
of the men I attract in my life, and more conscious of not tolerating abuse than I would have been conscious of if it would have happened before I did this kind of work. And I did attracted I did attracted some men who were not actually kind of a relationship. It was just some former male friends, and
mm,
they tried to misbehave with me and tried to take advantage of me, which was again another story around that. I was
mm,
When I was around the age of 10, a plumber came in the house, and he came to fetch some plumbing in the bathroom, and he saw me sitting alone in the bathroom, sitting alone in my room, and he tried to misbehave with me. And I told
Mm,
my family about it, and my father beat him up, gave him a good bashing for messing up with me.
mm,
After the man was gone, after that plumber was out of the house, my sister said to me that all men are the same. They only want one thing. You have to stay away from all of them. So that was the belief given to me that all men only will only want you for
mm.
one thing. So I lived with that, believing that belief that my sister said that to me for most of my life until I started doing this kind of work. And when I wanted to attract a partner, like after I became an adult, I attracted a male former friend who again tried to take advantage of me by misbehaving with me. And I told him that stood up for myself. I told him that I am not tolerating this. Get lost, and it stopped when he understood that I won't take it. But
Yeah,
again,
yeah,
that situation happened. When that situation happened again, I kind of reminded myself, I said to myself that I know I was right, because men will only want one thing and I have to stay away from all of them. So there was obviously that confusion in my head, because consciously I desired a partner, but
mm,
subconsciously I was telling myself that men will only want me for one thing, so I better stay away from all of them. And until I did my reprogramming, I wasn't aware of it, obviously. So yeah, I am kind of, it's a blessing in disguise that I haven't been in a real relationship, even though I attracted men here and there who tried to take advantage of me, but I somehow managed to get away with it. And
yeah.
yeah, it was a blessing in disguise to not be in a relationship before I did my reprogramming work.
Karishma, that's quite an interesting view for me, because what you're saying is this lens, in the one hand, protected you of just entering into any type of romantic relationship because you kind of were guarded and you knew that that's not, you knew what your worth and your value was. So, whilst those negative experiences that early on was not great, it also was a big contribution to you and a gift and opportunity that is now playing out in your adult life to do the work that you're doing. And
Exactly.
we don't always see it that way. Even your dad, I mean, you was describing your dad as being abusive towards your mom, but he did stand up for you in that moment when that plumber was attempting to misbehave. So,
Exactly.
so that also potentially restored some of your faith that it can't all be bad. It can't just be the stereotypical male that's dominant and that is abusive and that doesn't know how to show love. So I'm very pleased to hear that you have taken those experiences and have allowed that to shape who you have become and how you want to serve today. And I want to
Exactly.
acknowledge that.
Thank you. Yes, it's obviously kind of like generalization thing when
Yeah.
like there are 7 billion population on the planet, and let's say 50% of them are men. And if one or two men take advantage of us, we kind of make up a story that all men are the same, when we probably don't even know all men in the world. So it's obviously a generalization and kind of a judgment that all men are the same because one man did that to me. So yeah, that was I became aware of that judgment I was making of men, that
Mm,
just
mm.
because one man or two men tried to take advantage of me. So yeah, that
But
was
Karishma,
yes.
I'm just thinking, Jamila and I are both divorced. I call it consciously uncoupled. She calls it divorce. But I think that the experience in a marriage, even, or in any relationship, gives us the lessons and the learnings of what it is we want to attract the next time. But we also know what is our role in the co-creation of how those people in those relationships treat us, right? So when I talk about relationships, or it's all relationships. It's not just romantic relationships. So I'm very keen to hear in your other, across the spectrum of your other relationships, were you as guarded and judgmental as we all are? Or did you take a different stance there as well? And how did people treat you based on the energy that you were vibrating at, given your experiences as a young girl?
It was obviously my relationships before I started doing my inner work, and after I did it, it's a big difference. Even my relationship with my dad, I have done a lot of forgiveness work and releasing any pain and anger I had towards him because he abused my mother, or he called me a failure after I lost my job. I have done a lot of work on releasing all that anger I had towards him and understanding his point of view of where he was coming from, which has obviously helped in improving my relationship with him. So yeah, there was before I while growing up, there was a lot of uh, even if I talk about just my dad, which was like the male role model in my family, in my life, there was a lot of fear and anger when I was trying to communicate with him. I usually limits my communication with him because of fear, or because of not getting into trouble with him because of his anger issues. I had all of lot of fear around that. But after I have done my own work and forgiveness and releasing any resentment, there is a the relationship has improved a lot. There is not as much fear, or definitely no anger that I had.
I think I can relate to that also, because for me, when I didn't get the support from my dad or my family, but my dad in particular, who I had been very close with in my younger years, when I didn't get that um, reinforced support from him while I was going through my divorce, I felt a lot of anger and resentment and bitterness towards him. Not fear, but mostly anger and resentment and disbelief also, for him not standing up for me and being there and having my back. But like you said, our parents do the best that they can do with the skills and the knowledge that they have. And similarly, we do the same. So when we do the work for us within ourselves, we do that inner work, and we are able to let go of that bitterness and resentment and anger. And, a lot of the times there's shame and guilt that's also attached to that. But when we are able to do that and truly love ourselves for who we are, and to accept the choices that we have made to have brought us to the place that we are at, and when we can forgive first and foremost ourselves, that makes the biggest difference in how we relate to those around us. And it makes it easier for us then to offer that same forgiveness to those who we feel have let us down or who haven't been there for us. My question for you, Karishma, is that you now are a self-love coach, and keeping in mind the experience that you've had. I'm sure that you have some young girls that come to you for coaching. How can you compare the young girl that you were and the lack of self-love that you had for yourself to what girls in this day and age are going through?
There is definitely no, in the past, self love was not as much acceptable term than what it is now. So there is more acceptance around self love, around understanding that you have to, that there is nothing wrong with putting yourself first and prioritizing your needs and speaking up for yourself. So it is, I see when I coach younger girls when I was their age, when I coach them, there is less of, not as much of self esteem issues as I had. Obviously, that is more of, again, I'm kind of generalizing, because again, if they grow up in a domestic violence and abusive household, or if they went through some deep traumatic issues, then they may had self-esteem issues, even though they were more acceptance, or there was more acceptance of self-love. But in general, uh, I see there is more acceptance around self-love in this day and age when I coach younger girls than it was in the past, than it was in my life in the past.
Well, that's really so refreshing to hear, and especially now, whilst we're celebrating Women's Month. Another thing is that, Anissa, I'm not sure if this is the case with you, but in a lot of cultures, like you said, Karishma, the woman's job is to be at home, be the caregiver, take care of the family, make sure that the food is on the table when the husband comes home. Even to some extent taking care of the extended family. And what I've noticed particularly, and to quite happily, is that nowadays the girls are becoming so empowered. Education is a priority, making sure that they become qualified in whatever career that they wish to pursue has become a real priority for them. And parents are actually encouraging this. Whereas at one stage, it may not have been so quickly supported or encouraged. But as a result, what's happening is that these young, empowered professional girls now, once they've gotten married, the whole dynamic of marriage as well has changed, hasn't it? Because you're going to work the same time as your husband is going to work. You're putting in a full day's work, just the same as your male counterpart is. And when you come home, you both come home exhausted and spent. It's not to say that one is more tired than the other, or one has more energy than the other. And so you have to make sure that your chores are shared as well. No longer is it just expected that it's the woman's responsibility. But here's where I find that there's a little bit of a disconnect. And this especially comes from the mums of these young girls or young men, in the opinion that they have of them. Because here I am as a young woman coming home, and my husband comes home, and if my mom is sitting there, what is the expectation? The expectation is for that young girl to get into the kitchen, to make sure that the food is the same put onto the table, and to make sure that the husband just sits down, after which they have their meal, and she is expected to clear up and to do all the rest of the chores. And what I find is that there's now this conflict between these empowered young women and their modern mindset, and rightfully so, and these mums or mums-in-law who have a different perspective of it. And I actually admire and I celebrate the women for standing their ground and holding fast to committing to the fact that I'm just as tired as he is. What's stopping him from doing that to me? So do you find that, do you get that observation of how some roles are still kept whilst others have evolved over the years?
Yes, it definitely. What you said reminds me of how in my grandparents, great grandparents' time, how it was like I was born and brought up in India, even though now I moved to Australia. And in India, in maybe around 50, 60 years ago, the conditioning was if a girl child is born, firstly, a girl child was not kind of if a girl child is born, it was not kind of celebrated in the family. It was not a big celebration that a girl is born,
Yes.
because it's a girl. It's kind of more expenses, more looking for the boy, etc. All that kind of conditioning that people had at that time, which
Yeah.
in some villages they still do in India, I think. Plus, there was this common cultural belief that if it is a girl, what's the point of sending her to school and get spending money on her education, because all she has to do is get married and cook and clean for her husband, which she can do without going to school, which she will learn from her mother. So why wasting money in sending her to school and her education? So she was kind of never educated. It was like around 50 years ago, it was the common cultural thing in India that if it is a girl, why to send her to school? And then after marriage, it was like, firstly, because if she is uneducated, her husband was not treating her with respect. Since she is uneducated, he was not respecting her. Plus, even if the marriage survives, even if they don't end up getting divorced or separated, but if something happens to the husband and he dies, or something unfortunate happens to the husband, then the wife is all on her own and she is uneducated. She is doesn't understand finances. She has no one to take care of herself, no one who can take care of her, and she doesn't know how to take care of herself because she wasn't educated. So that has obviously over time it has evolved even in India, and even though it still happens in small areas of India in some villages, but it has definitely reduced over time, and people are becoming more conscious and more accepting of even a girl child, just like a boy child. And yeah, as you said, again, it was like a similar thing even in India, that a girl was expected, if a young girl was if her brother or her father has come home after work, a young girl is
Hmm.
expected to uh, put the plate for her father and give him food and water. And yeah, that's okay, but if the boy is also sitting there, if a brother is also sitting there, why can't he give the father food? Like, cooking and cleaning, it needs to be considered as a life skill for both genders, or all genders, I should say, and not just something that is gender based only for women.
My son is sitting here listening to our podcast and he's smiling. But I think the great thing about this is that this new generation has grown up to realize that irrespective of your gender, you all equal and you expected to pull your weight. And in as much as the women have become empowered, the men have become really open-minded now and accepting and respectful of the role of a woman. So Anissa, I think, I mean, like you've got a son, and how
True.
what do you advise him of? How do you explain to him, about how you should respect women and what their roles are and what he should expect from a potential girlfriend or wife?
Well, firstly, Karishma and Jamila, I just want to say to you that my daughter, who's 14 years old today, it's her birthday.
Ah,
She,
birthday.
thank you. So she has this
Happy
thing
birthday.
about, thank you so much. She argues and has this dispute with her brothers, and she'll say, What makes you think and believe that the girls are always supposed to be cooking and cleaning and being in the kitchen? This is not how it's supposed to be. So she pushes back completely. She's feisty in that way, which just goes to show what you guys were talking about. It's like the evolution of the more empowered generation that we're working with now. It doesn't take away that even if we in South Africa, and there are vast cultural differences and the way the house is run is very different, there still exists a bit of what you described, Karishma, that it's still an expectation. The woman is in the kitchen, the woman is the one seeing to the household, even if she is employed and bringing the bread and butter in the same way that the spouse is. But where my sons are concerned is that I have, from young, I'm the stricter one. And I was the one always to say, we are all contributing meaningfully to this household. And so we all bring our part. It doesn't cross any gender conversation in my home. Besides my daughter raising awareness to her brothers and saying, doesn't mean I must just go hang the load of laundry. You're gonna too. Doesn't mean I have to take out the dishes and dry it and pack it away. You do too. Now here's the reverse that's happening. The boys are starting to say to my daughter, what makes you any better to take out the trash than I have to? So that's also coming up to say, why must I do more of the heavy lifting stuff? If you want to be equal, take out the trash too, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting dynamic that's at play within my own home. I don't know how it is anywhere else. But what I'm trying to teach them is the value of equality, right? The value of equality, no matter where, and fairness and kindness, because that doesn't call for gender. That's just what we need to show up as human beings. And if you can show it to yourself, given the self-love aspect of it, and set those boundaries up front, boundaries is a form of self-love. So Karishma, on that note, talk to us about what you feel boundaries are and how that supports the self-love journey and the forgiveness journey.
It's definitely an important topic, boundaries, and yeah, it's important to learn to set boundaries, and it's all about speaking up for yourself, being assertive, and obviously not being aggressive, while listening to others' point of view and also explaining what you want, what you need, speaking up for yourself, and being confident, which is a part of setting powerful boundaries. And yeah, forgiveness definitely plays a big role in it because, like Jamila talked about, we have to, just like forgiving the other person, we have to forgive ourselves as well. So, forgiving yourself for in the past when you have not set boundaries, instead of beating yourself up for it, or maybe if you have set boundaries, maybe it was not the most effective way to set it. So instead of beating yourself up for it, forgiving yourself because you didn't know what you didn't know at that time, and now you know better, so you will do better.
I think that's a very important point, is to forgive yourself because you did not know any better. And I think also just we're always looking at our flaws and our imperfections, and I think it's so important for us to focus on our strengths and to see that within ourselves. You know, if we're able to look at ourselves, if we're able to acknowledge or be grateful for whatever strengths we have. And sometimes we tend to overlook these or take them for granted. But if we can acknowledge that, then it helps us to stand more firmly in our truth. And in standing in our truth, we can look around to the women in our circles and offer them that gift, I think, of saying, I see you. And when we're able to do that, that's how we create stronger bonds and stronger communities amongst ourselves, so that we can then empower each other. We can then, when I'm not able to, or when I'm not looking at myself um, as being a strong woman, the women in my company, in my circle, are able to do that for me and to empower me and push me along, and um, yeah, to just support me and encourage me to get back to that space of self-confidence and self-acceptance.
Yes, exactly. And again, with boundaries, it's not just about setting boundaries with other people. It's obviously about setting boundaries around, say, social media, technology, a mobile phone. For example, instead of jumping on the phone, the first thing that you do after waking up, having that boundary that after waking up, that first hour is for myself, it's me time, it's something that things for which I want to do, like exercise, journaling, anything that you want to do. So I am not touching my phone until I do XYZ, instead of jumping on the phone first thing in the morning, which most people often do. So yeah, it's not just about setting boundaries with other people, it's also about setting boundaries around things that we use and sometimes tend to overuse. Like most people have that phone addiction.
Yeah, setting healthy
Ah,
boundaries for yourself.
I just want to read a comment from Dr. Supriya Kumaravelan. I think that's how I pronounce it. Not sure if that's somebody you know, Karishma, on your side. But she says, great, insightful views. I appreciate. Woman, thy name is fragility, but you are stronger than the mountains. That's
Oh,
beautiful.
yes, that's definitely
I want
beautiful. Thank you, Supriya.
to I want to just touch on the social media aspect, because that triggered earlier for me when we were talking about this new generation, this empowered generation. And when we bring it back to self-love, I think what social media is also doing is creating a bit of imbalance where young ladies, girls, young ladies, and us adults potentially are doing the comparison towards other women out there that may look like, or other girls that may look the better view of what it looks like to be a sophisticated woman, or somebody that a young girl that's got it all together. And I think those are barriers to also cultivate the healthy level of self-love. Are you finding any girls coming to you with that particular challenge where self-love is almost feels out of place for them?
Yes, I do get a lot of women coming to me around that, and young girls as well. And yeah, comparison definitely affects our self love in a not so positive way. It's something, comparison is something that we need to deal with, and unfortunately we all have that habit of comparing ourselves to someone who we think is doing better than us in one or the other area of life, or who has what we want, and we think we start comparing ourselves to them. For example, if you maybe want good financial opportunities, if you want more money in your life, you may go into that comparison mode with other people who you know have more money in their life, who have more money than you tend to go into that comparison mode with other people who have more money than you. Or for example, if you want to attract a partner, when you see someone else who is happy in a relationship, you start comparing yourself with that person, that they have what I want, why don't I have it, what's wrong with me? And that obviously doesn't help. It impacts our self-esteem even more, and
Mhm.
in a negative way. And it's something to remember that like maybe if maybe the other person have their own struggles, have their own challenges that they may have dealt with, and like we never know what the other person's side of the story is. We don't know what they may have gone through after to achieve that good financial life, or to get that romantic relationship. We never know what they may have gone through. So instead of comparing our chapter 1 to their chapter 10, it's important to remember that, yeah, we are where we are right now, and one day we'll have what we want to attract in our life, as long as we stay focused and continue to work on our goals of attracting what we want instead of comparing ourselves to someone else.
Mm. I think that obsession with what's going on with other people and what their lives are is it's the height of your own insecurities, isn't it? And a very low level of self-love. Because if we really and truly got in touch with um, all the gifts that we have within ourselves, all the strengths that we possess, that we are naturally born with. And no two people are the same. We're all different, we're all unique. And I think that when you take the time and allow yourself the gift of actually getting to know who you are, then you don't have to ever compare yourself to anyone else. You start to be grateful for every little um, good and bad that you have. Well, I say bad because, seemingly bad, I should say, qualities that you have as a person. But I think that when you're able to understand and realize the absolute uniqueness of each individual and what they come with, then there's absolutely no space for you to consider obsessing about another person's life.
Exactly. And again, it's like there will always be people who are doing better than us in all areas of life, and there will always be people who are doing worse than us in all areas of life. And we never compare ourselves to someone who is doing worse than us. We are always comparing ourselves to someone who we
Mm,
think is doing better than us.
mm,
And it's like again, it obviously doesn't work for us when we are comparing ourselves. So um, firstly, obviously, comparison is bad, but uh, in that sense, it's not good. But
mm,
even if we even want to compare, if it is too difficult to let go of that comparison it is, then instead of comparing ourselves to someone who is doing better than us, because we never know what their journey was, what they may have gone through to achieve that, what they have in their life, maybe we can use that comparison mode in a positive way by comparing ourselves to someone who is doing worse than us, and reminding ourselves that how grateful we are that we are not in that situation where that other person is who is doing worse than us, and maybe we can do something to uplift that other person in that way.
mm. Yeah, I think, and it's about just reframing comparison or looking
Exactly.
at it from that perspective, and rather looking at it from a more positive perspective, where you see someone who is doing well in their lives, who has succeeded in different aspects of their lives, and you look at it and you say, wow, how can I learn from this? What lessons are there for me to learn from it? Instead of actually looking at it from a perspective where you are jealous of it or feel intimidated by it or wish that you had some other person's life.
Exactly.
Karishma,
If yes.
I'm pondering because we've got 10 minutes left. I'm wanting some strategies and some of your tips and suggestions on what are the best ways to cultivate self-love and to start a practice of forgiveness. What are those ways that you encourage the ladies that you're coaching, or even yourself?
So the first thing is obviously understanding that what the other person did is like they only did what they knew best, and if they would have known better, they would have done better. And it's like some people don't, most people don't have that. They have that incorrect definition of forgiveness where they think that when I am forgiving the other person, I am letting them off the hook, and I am saying that what they did was right, and kind of condoning and accepting their wrongs, which is not really forgiveness. What forgiveness is, because forgiveness is for us, it's not for the other person. And forgiveness is just saying that I deserve peace of mind, and it's not worth my time and energy to hold on to resentment and anger with someone else. So I am letting go of it, and one way to let go of it is to write a forgiveness letter, which I often recommend my clients. And it's just a letter in which you write a letter to the person you are angry with, person you are holding on to resentment and grudges with. And it's just about you start the letter with expressing your emotions, writing about your anger, resentment, and anything, any emotion that you are feeling towards that situation that happened with that person, or any emotion that you are feeling with that person. Because it's forgiveness is not about saying that don't express your emotion, ignore your anger. It's not about that, because our anger is just as valid as any other emotion. So start the letter by expressing your anger, resentment, or any other emotion that you are feeling about that situation, and then continue to write the letter by saying that I am choosing to forgive you. And why are you choosing forgiveness? Which is mainly because you are obviously choosing forgiveness because you understand that there is no point holding on to resentment, because it's that anger is in your heart, it is not in other person's heart, it is only hurting you. So instead of holding on to that anger, letting go of it so you can move on and have peace of mind. And it's like even though you are writing that letter to the other person, to someone you are angry with, and again, that letter can even be for you. You can write that letter to yourself. If you are angry with yourself, if you are working on self forgiveness, you can write that letter to yourself, or you can write that letter to the other person you may be angry with. And it's not about, you don't have to post the letter, it's not really required, but it's a letter you write for yourself. And like when that anger or resentment creep up again in future, if it ever comes back, the letter is kind of a reminder for you that you can read it again and remind yourself why did you choose forgiveness, so you can let go of that anger if it ever comes back.
And the self-love aspect, because I have this little practice which I call my yes day. And this yes day is just like my kids, and it's based on a movie that I watched on Netflix actually. It's like we tend to not honor ourselves as women enough, and we do everything for everyone, including our families, take priority. And the kids always want you to say yes to everything. And then I thought about it and I thought, but hold on, I'm going to say yes to myself for a change. And so nobody knows what I do. And then I get dressed like I'm going to have a full day's work. And I have the practice of then starting off with breakfast. Then, depending on how I feel in that moment, I either go for a spa treatment, and thereafter I go and watch a movie. I go and treat myself to my favorite treats, whether it is my favorite slice of cake and coffee or ice cream or my guilty pleasures. And by the end of that day, I have filled my cup again.
Mm.
And I don't need to share it with the world. Okay, I am now again. But that's just my way of sometimes filling my cup, because when I know my cup is overflowing and I'm overwhelmed and I'm short off and I'm projecting and I'm resentful, I know it's, and I'm not giving myself enough love and affection and time and respect even. So I want to
Mm.
know from you, Karishma and Jamila, what is your kind of yes day or self-love practices?
Anissa, I'm so glad that you brought that up. And I just want to make mention of how we prioritize date night in relationships. Okay, we
Yes.
prioritize that, say, for a relationship to be sustainable, for you to keep that love going, for there to be respect for each other. We must make sure that we put in the effort, we do the work. And I love what you just said about you having your own date night or date day. And it's so important for you to take that time to acknowledge yourself, to celebrate yourself, to reinforce that I work hard, um, I do my best all day, and I deserve to be celebrated. And this doesn't have to be done once in a while or when you have a breakdown of, you feel like, okay, now it's time for me. But we can do this every week for ourselves, or we can do it every day. And for me, it shows up in the way that I take care of myself, in the way that I take care of my body, and I prioritize exercise and self-care in that sense. It's in about the way that I dress. It's in about the way that the books that I read on how to educate myself, and to continually doing that. And I find that a lot of people feel that when you come to a certain age or um, a phase in your life, um,
I want to say, let's to just enlighten Karishma. Version 5.2 is Jamila. So in other words, she's 52 years young. And I'm saying young because look how gorgeous she is, right? 52 years young. And so it shows that she honors herself and her body. So you can carry on now so that the world knows your age now.
Thank you, Anissa. But what my point is that we always talk about body, mind, and soul and spirit. And it's so important for us to take care of all that, the collective of who we are. And it doesn't matter with whichever version of yourself you are showing up as. It doesn't mean that because you are at an advanced version that you let go of any of that. No, by no means. You have to continually, right up until the end of your life. And I find that until I stop and take my last breath on this, I'm going to do exactly what it is that I feel I am deserving of. I've been given this life, and it's a gift from the divine for me. And the expectation I feel is for me to honor this life, to cherish it, to protect it in every realm regarding body, mind, and soul. So for me, it's those simple practices of looking after yourself, spoiling yourself, educating yourself, preserving yourself. Those are That's my form of self-care and self-love.
Beautiful. I love all of those. Those were some golden ones there. Karishma, for you, what would you like to leave the audience with in terms of what you share with your clients and also what you use for yourself?
Thanks for sharing, Anita and Jamina, and I really loved all what you shared about how you take care of yourself and self love. And yeah, in regards to me, I believe that self love is definitely a lifelong journey. It's something that I myself is still learning, even though I consider myself a self love coach, because I know I can help someone else, help other women love themselves. Self love in my own life, it's something I'm still learning myself, because there are times things happen, things go wrong in life when I sometimes beat myself up for something that happened. But it's then if that thing happened, if I beat myself up for something, kind of easier for me to remind myself that self love is important, and it's much easier for me to bounce back from that situation from which I'm beating myself up for. It's since I'm embracing self love, it's much easier for me to bounce back from that situation and embrace self love and remind myself that everyone makes mistakes and it's okay to make mistakes. So just learn the lesson and move on, and definitely learning and educating myself. And as Anisa mentioned, that going for that ice cream or that coffee date, etc. So yeah, that is something I enjoy doing too, and it's definitely health is an important value for me. It's one of my primary values too. So instead of when I have that when I have a few scoops of ice cream, instead of beating myself up for it, reminding myself that it was just a way of celebrating myself for that. It's just a way I celebrated myself, and tomorrow I will go back into exercising, and it's obviously not something to do every day. By having that
Yes,
as a ice cream, it's something more of a weekly thing or maybe a monthly thing, if that works. So
yes,
yeah,
yes.
those are some of the ways I celebrate myself and give self love to myself.
I want to thank you for that, Karishma. We've come to the end of our segment, but in summary, what I'm hearing you say is we don't guilt ourselves for the guilty pleasures that we sometimes need to indulge in. And sometimes I say to my kids, yeah, I'm eating my feelings because when I'm not in a good space, yeah, I do tend to go to food because I love food and the sweet. I'm a sweet tooth, so I go to the sweet things. But it's right, like you said. I think the biggest gem I take from what you said is self love is a continuous journey. It's every day. We need to do it throughout our lives because we're always going to have the triggers that's going to make us feel at times less than or not good enough or not worthy or like we don't belong or that we have to measure up to a standard or to a culture, etc. So I want to thank you for your wisdom that you've shared here today. And Jamila is always bringing her wisdom along and just her humbleness and humility. And I want to just, on that note, say we're going to see you another time, hopefully, where you're going to come maybe share some more stories and interesting stuff, maybe that you have found love. Who knows in the future?
Thank you. Keeping my fingers crossed for it.
Yes, thank you so much,
Jamila,
Karishma.
anything you want to say?
Thank you, Karishma, for
Okay.
joining us for this hour and sharing your wisdom with us and giving us those helpful tips and tools that we can use in our own lives. And I think just in parting, I'd like to say that we should always be kind to ourselves
Mm,
first. And in light of Women's Month, um, extend that kindness to one or two or maybe even more women around you. Um, it
yeah.
takes nothing for us to empower and encourage and um, offer some sort of confidence for our fellow sisters. So I would just encourage us all to do that, but most importantly, be kind to ourselves.
Mm, beautiful. Thank you, Karishma. You can stay on. I'm going to end the live. We just stay on for a short debrief. And so I'll end the live. Thank you to Sajida, Taz, Craig, Haifa, all that joined us from the Instagram page. Thank you for those that are going to watch the replay. We'll see you again next week, same time, same conversation, keeping it real around your hero's journey. On that note, goodbye from us.
Thank